Emily Dickinson, the enigmatic poet of American literature. Emily Dickinson, 1830 to 1886, was an American poet whose work profoundly influenced modern poetry. Born in Amherst, Massachusetts, she spent most of her life in relative seclusion, writing nearly 1,800 poems, many of which remained unpublished during her lifetime. Her innovative style, marked by unconventional punctuation, slant rhyme, and deep introspection, set her apart from the literary norms of the 19th century. Early life and education. Emily Elizabeth Dickinson was born on December 10, 1830, in Amherst, Massachusetts, into a distinguished and politically active family. Her father, Edward Dickinson, was a prominent lawyer, a trustee of Amherst College, and later a U.S. congressman. Her mother, Emily Norcross Dickinson, was a more reserved figure, often described as distant and emotionally withdrawn. Emily had two siblings, her older brother, William Austin Dickinson, and her younger sister, Lavinia Dickinson. The three siblings remained close throughout their lives, with Austin managing the family estate and Lavinia playing a key role in preserving Emily's poetry after her death. Dickinson grew up in a home that valued education and intellectual engagement. She attended Amherst Academy, a prestigious local school, from 1840 to 1847. There, she excelled in subjects like literature, botany, Latin, and history, displaying an early love for language and nature, both of which would later dominate her poetry. Teachers noted her intelligence and quick wit, though she was also known for her independence and occasional defiance of authority. In 1847, Dickinson enrolled at Mount Holyoke Female Seminary, a well-respected institution known for its rigorous academic and religious teachings. However, she stayed for only 1 year before returning home. The reasons for her departure remain unclear. Some speculate she suffered from homesickness, while others believe she rejected the school's strong religious emphasis. Regardless, this marked a turning point in her life, as she gradually withdrew from social circles and devoted herself increasingly to reading, writing, and self-reflection. Though her formal education ended early, Dickinson continued to study literature, philosophy, and science independently. She was deeply influenced by the works of Shakespeare, the Bronte sisters, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and contemporary poets like Elizabeth Barrett Browning, all of whom shaped her unique poetic voice. A life of seclusion and devotion to poetry. By her early 20s, Emily Dickinson had already begun retreating from social life, choosing to spend more time at home rather than engaging in the traditional activities expected of young women of her time. Although she maintained friendships through letters and occasional visits, she increasingly preferred solitude. Over time, she became known in Amherst for her reclusive lifestyle, rarely leaving the family home, the homestead, and often declining visitors. Her withdrawal from society intensified during the 1850s and 1860s, a period that also marked her most prolific years as a poet. Many scholars believe that personal loss, unfulfilled love, and spiritual struggles contributed to her decision to live in isolation. She experienced the deaths of several close friends and relatives, including her cousin Sophia Holland, the Reverend Charles Wadsworth, and her father, all of whom had a profound impact on her emotional state and themes in her poetry. Despite her physical seclusion, Dickinson was far from disengaged intellectually. She maintained an extensive correspondence with friends, writers, and literary figures, including Thomas Wentworth Higginson, Samuel Bowles, and Susan Gilbert Dickinson, her brother's wife and a close confidant. These letters were not only personal, but also served as a way for her to share her poetic ideas and seek guidance on her work. Her poetry was deeply unconventional for the time. She used short lines, dashes, and irregular capitalization, breaking away from traditional poetic forms. She wrote about death, nature, love, immortality, and personal identity, often expressing deep emotions and existential questions in just a few lines. Though she wrote nearly 1,800 poems, only a few were published during her lifetime, and those were heavily edited to fit conventional standards. Her retreat into solitude was not simply an escape, but a deliberate choice that allowed her to explore her inner world and develop a literary voice that was uniquely her own. Today, her poetry is celebrated for its originality and profound insight into the human experience. Limited recognition in her lifetime. Despite her prodigious literary output, Emily Dickinson received little recognition during her lifetime. Of the nearly 1,800 poems she wrote, fewer than a dozen were published before her death. Those that did appear in print, mostly in local newspapers and literary magazines, were heavily edited with changes to punctuation, capitalization, and structure to conform to conventional poetic norms. These alterations stripped her work of its distinctive style, which included dashes, unconventional grammar, and slant rhyme, making it nearly unrecognizable. One of the main reasons Dickinson remained unpublished was likely her own reluctance. She was intensely private about her work, sharing her poems primarily through letters to close friends and family. She corresponded frequently with Thomas Wentworth Higginson, a respected literary critic, sending him poems and asking for feedback. Higginson admired her talent, but struggled to fully grasp the originality of her style, advising her to revise her work if she wished to be published. Dickinson, however, resisted such changes, preferring to write for herself rather than for public recognition. Another factor in her obscurity was the literary climate of the time, which favored traditional forms and male poets. The bold and experimental nature of her work was ahead of its time, making it difficult for contemporary editors to appreciate. Though largely unknown to the world while she lived, Dickinson remained deeply committed to her poetry, carefully preserving her work in hand-sewn booklets. These collections would later become one of the most significant discoveries in American literary history. Death and posthumous fame. Emily Dickinson passed away on May 15, 1886, at the age of 55. The cause of her death is widely believed to have been Bright's disease, a kidney disorder, though some scholars suggest other health complications. In her later years, Dickinson's physical condition had deteriorated, and she suffered several personal losses, including the death of her father in 1874, her mother in 1882, and her beloved nephew, Gilbert, in 1883. These losses likely deepened her retreat from the outside world, and she spent much of her final years in seclusion at the homestead in Amherst. After her death, Dickinson's younger sister, Lavinia, made a stunning discovery: nearly 1,800 poems, meticulously compiled into hand-sewn booklets. Unlike the few poems published during her lifetime, most of which had been edited beyond recognition, these manuscripts revealed the true depth of her unique poetic voice. Recognizing their literary significance, Lavinia sought to publish her sister's work, enlisting the help of Mabel Loomis Todd and Thomas Wentworth Higginson. The first collection, Poems, 1890, was well received, followed by additional volumes in 1891 and 1896. However, these early editions were heavily edited to conform to conventional poetic structures. It wasn't until the 1955 publication of the Poems of Emily Dickinson, edited by Thomas H. Johnson, that readers saw her poetry in its original form. Today, Dickinson is regarded as one of America's greatest poets, her influence spanning generations of writers. Though she lived in solitude, her words have achieved an immortality she often pondered in her poetry. Legacy. Emily Dickinson's legacy is one of profound influence and enduring fascination. Though she lived in near seclusion and published very little during her lifetime, her poetry has since become a cornerstone of American literature. Her innovative use of language, marked by unusual punctuation, slant rhyme, and a minimalist yet deeply evocative style, was far ahead of her time, shaping modern poetry and inspiring countless poets, including Sylvia Plath, Robert Frost, and Adrienne Rich. Her work continues to be widely studied in academic circles, where scholars analyze her themes of nature, death, love, and immortality. Dickinson's poetry resonates across generations because of its emotional depth and philosophical inquiries, posing questions about existence, faith, and the mysteries of the human experience. Unlike many of her contemporaries, she explored these themes with a unique blend of ambiguity and intensity, making her work timeless. Today, Dickinson's Amherst home, known as the Homestead, has been preserved as a museum, drawing visitors from around the world. Her poetry is frequently adapted into music, theater, and visual art, further extending her cultural impact. Though she lived in solitude, her words continue to engage and inspire, proving that true artistic genius transcends time and place.